Hey everyone, Editor Joe here. September marks the Thought Vessel's 2-year anniversary and our 50th episode. With that, we want to hear from you. We want to know what questions you have, any concerns not brought up enough in the community, and we'll talk about it. You can either leave a comment on this episode, email us at thoughtvesselshow@gmail.com, or in Joe Kilcar VA's general chat in the Lobby Pristine. We are so thankful for 2 years and 50 episodes, and we can't wait to bring you more. Now, enjoy the video.
And welcome back. Today we are wrapping up our Tiebreaker series talking about one of the most important components of winning or losing Commander game, the narrative. I'm Levi.
I'm Jacoby.
And I'm Joe.
And this is the Thought Vessel. Welcome to the show. Of course, today we are diving into the narrative. This is going to be being good at people instead of just necessarily Commander. This is won me a lot of games. This is one I'm sure a lot of you, a lot of games. It is an underrated component of winning or losing a Commander game. Effectively, we'll give a quick definition here and we'll kind of jump into some examples. The narrative is the overall feeling or consensus as a whole with presented information. This is kind of getting the general vibe of what the table is thinking about or maybe how they're perceiving something.
Man, that's much different than what I thought the narrative would be. I thought it was going to be a romance, maybe a murder mystery.
I was under the impression we were on the horror district.
I am, in fact, a horror.
You don't belong to Phyrexia. Get out of here.
We'll provide an example here as far as the narrative is concerned. I think the most common one we see is what the problem at the table is going to be. The problem is going to be, who do we think is in the lead? It's a very complicated game. There's a lot of moving parts. It's multiplayer. People are able to team up on each other. So there's always this political mindset of who is the biggest problem at the table. And then typically we tend to, as Commander players, it turns it kind of into a perpetual 3-on-1 instead of a 2-on-2 or a 1-on-2-on-1 or something along those lines. Being able to determine where everyone thinks the pressure is going to be very important.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If I'm looking at the board state and I'm seeing one person, for an example, last night, I was in a bracket 1 pod. We were all supposed to just be playing silly little decks that we're trying to exhibit. Someone certainly had the idea of just doing birds as a deck and just showing off their cute little birds. Unfortunately, this was Choco. This was somebody who did want to do a lot of birds and landfall shenanigans, but this was not in any way that I could see bracket 1. They also had an Akroma's Will in there.
What?
Huh.
Who in the right mind looks at a Chroma's Will and goes, ah, yes, my bracket 1 card.
And this was in difference to the deck at the top played by Mia of Ladies in Red. Every art that could possibly be a lady that had red on it was in there, headed by our good Italian girl Tifa. The other deck, which was Ovia from Aetherdrift, that was nothing but big Chonkum's big stupid guys. If it was big and stupid and could win you in a draft, it was in there.
If I was going to do a bracket 1 deck at this point, it would just be my Owl Binder put into a deck. It would just be every Owl artwork I can possibly get my hands on, put into a deck that can run the colors.
But obviously, the example is you ran Choco and you had everything to make a bird on board. You had the widest board. You had the biggest things because you also decided to have a splash of landfall. So you had Cultivator Colossus. Every single person was just, well, I can't deal with this with my board because, my God, your synergy. And I was just there trying to kill Aerith with Sephiroth, the Boros one.
But I think at that point, you were far and away the problem at the table. In a recent stream that I was on, I was using my Malcolm Sakashima clone deck. One of my opponents was playing the new Teamer Dragon precon, but it was upgraded. Laufey was playing it. So Laufey had a ton of different dragons on the board, attacking a bunch of people like crazy, to the point that it was so well established how scary their board was that I was able to draw 10 cards and make 15 treasures, and it was not considered the definitive threat at the table.
Sometimes when you're looking down the barrel of a dragon.
And that's the case where it was the amount of value that I was accruing was scary. But when you have a player that has flying lethal for you, that's more of the threat for you as an individual than it is collectively.
An example I have too here is I play a lot of games with new players. I've got a lot of new players in my recent group. A lot of them don't understand how multiplicatives work in the sense of you have 2 token doublers. So that means you get 3. And I'm like, that's not how multiples work. And
That's
they're
not
like,
how
what?
math works.
Right, because they thought it was additive, not multiplicative. So it's just like, okay, additional tokens. I'm like, no. They're scarier than you think. That is 8 per thing with what they have on board. And they're like, it'll be fine. And then I'm just sitting there like, guys, no, please. He has assembled the legions on 3. I don't want to die to 8 times 3 tokens.
Specifically, the fact that there are different ways in Magic that do different math, because there are some that do just say you make an additional token and not double the amount. Because they do that with a lot of the mana doublers too, like Mana Confluence and Heartbeat of Spring, because those are just an additional mana and not double mana. But we view them as mana doublers because we're typically going from 1 to 2.
You see that a lot with something like Mirari's Wake, where everyone always says like, oh, my lands tap for double. No, they tap for +1. If you had like a Gaia's Cradle in play or something, it's not going to tap for your 15 creatures times 2 or something like that. I think that's kind of the cost of doing business when you have an eternal format where all the card design goes back decades. Everything's been explored. So you're going to have impulse draw that's until the end of your turn or the beginning of your next turn or the end of your next turn and now everything in between. It makes it a lot harder to make these decisions as far as keeping track of everything, but just adds a little extra layer of confusion to that newer player. So I definitely could sympathize.
And especially with all of the new designs out there that do interact with older cards, and newer players just going to be like, oh, I found this cool card.
Tangent aside, we'll move on to the next part, conditioning your pod or training your pod. If you can do something consistently over and over again, you can kind of actually psychologically train everyone else in your pod to behave in a certain way. For example, this was more on kind of bracket 2, bracket 3 types of pods. I used to know a player that he would only exert removal if something was going to be targeting his stuff or somebody was going to attack him. So he was strictly defensive. If you leave me alone, I'm going to leave you alone. Threats be darned. We're just going to go for it. He'd end up staying around in games a lot longer because people kind of just learned not to attack with him or mess with him because they didn't want their things removed. Now, inevitably, what would happen is somebody would get to like a critical mass of stuff and just take him out all at once. It's kind of harder to seek your revenge from the beyond. It was still an effective strategy over a longer period of time. On the other side of it is we had a player in a play group who, no matter what would happen, is they would always block. If you attack me, I'm going to block. I'm going to combo block if I can. I'm going to try to get creatures off the board. It came to the point where he's playing a hate bear or something that I don't like. I'm going to keep attacking him in hope that he ends up trading that off so I can do the thing I wanted to do. Was it the best strategy in the world? Not really, because we kind of learned how to exploit it.
Definitely bold strategies. Not going to lie on that one.
He didn't win a lot of games, but it was technically conditioning the table to use their creatures as removal sources.
Respect where it's earned. You committed people to doing punchies.
More than I can
with
do.
that as well. I think there's also a benefit to alliances in games where there's been many times in which I have played, and if I make an alliance with somebody early in the game, even a simple like, why don't you attack me with your veteran explorer, I'll trade it off and we'll all go get basic lands. When you get later in the game and you have those awkward team making situations where it's between 2 players at the end and you really don't have the ability to stop everyone, they tend to lean towards the person that they've been making deals with and kind of the friends with along the way. It's almost like in a narrative perspective that we kind of subconsciously put on the game. If you can have cards in your deck to kind of allow you to make some deals here and there, especially kind of less significant, kind of smaller stuff, I think it can actually benefit you in the long run.
Just like, please, my friend, take the secret rendezvous. Meet me on the cliff. And later on, they're like, that rendezvous was pretty tight, though. Here, take some life.
I never thought I would be facing down the problem with a Blink player. But what about a friend? I could do that.
Gotta love the Lord of the Rings references. You get a little bit of everything in this show. It's amazing. And I'm sure you've all had similar situations to that, or even we got to take down the problem. And if you remove the lightning greaves, I can remove the creature kind of a situation too. So it might not just be giving gifts, but even coordinating together to take down a common foe.
I've gotten to those kinds of alliances because I was a prominent group hug player. But at the same token, when it came back around to actually help deal with the problem, I'm just like, well, I can supercharge you. What's removal?
That's the problem with a lot of group hug is it just kind of supercharges. And if somebody pulls ahead early in the game, they can just sprint out of the gym at that point.
That's why I play it when I don't intend to win.
With group hug, I kind of like the more targeted, this one player gets the thing if I can, and then have some of the universal stuff. But I feel like it's just so hard if a player gets off to a fast start to slow them down enough to actually have it matter.
And you typically want to have the more friendly targeted in your deck to help you in those kinds of situations where you are not that island and you kind of want to extend that alliance. Getting your secret rendezvous is pretty good.
Well, let's go ahead and head off to the next one here. I think this one is the most important of this list to understand as far as what kind of players you're dealing with, and that's how they handle the unknown. The unknown is basically having like a newer strategy or plan that someone might not be familiar with. We see this kind of thing in CDH a lot when a new commander gets spoiled and they start doing really well in a tournament and then they start kind of falling off in production because everyone kind of figures out how the strategy works or what the lines are and where the interaction points are. When you get into more of a casual setting and you have maybe like a Reanimator or Aristocrat strategy, Blink, where there's a lot of moving pieces around, a newer player or just even a regular commander player, they're going to react to that in one or two ways. Either there's a lot of stuff going on over there. I don't know what's happening. I'm just going to focus on what I can understand or who we think is threat at this given time. Or I don't understand what's happening. I'm just going to take that person out so I don't get caught off guard out of nowhere. If you are in a pod and you have 3 people that have that aversion to the unknown, you might want to play something a bit more straightforward, or else you're not going to have a lot of success in those kind of pods.
Which is different than how I handle unknown, which is get pretty much the letters that spell my name and have them in my party.
I think that one went over my head.
Damn, none of you have played Silver or Gold back in the day where they had the unknowns, one for each letter.
Oh,
There we go. I didn't play those
I
games,
know.
but yes.
Yeah,
The
I played
unknowns
those.
that are letters.
That was a deep cut, man.
I'm gonna keep it a buck. They were my favorite Pokemon. I still would not have caught that.
Damn, I can't believe this.
The comment section is either going to light you up or going to light us up. One of the two is going to happen.
I'm airing
Or
more
Kate
towards
Luna's
y'all's.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next one here. This is so not the problem, but the threat. This is usually something that somebody will acquire over a period of time. If a player's winning a lot of games, or they're known for comboing out of nowhere, or they just have typically stronger decks, usually that type of player will command a lot more respect, and they'll usually get like random attacks out of nowhere more often.
So Levi.
Levi.
Not just Levi.
I
Not
know.
just Levi.
I also have gotten my own threat in so many different places, but by God, did it start with you?
With that, there's kind of two sides of this. If you are the threat, then you kind of need to be aware that you're getting the reputation, and then you can do a couple of things. Either one, you can lean into it and be the supervillain. At that point, you're going to want to prepare your decks to go 3-on-1, because that's what's going to end up happening. You're going to need to have more protection spells, maybe a bit more card draw, because when things get removed, you need to be able to keep playing things, or else you're going to run out of stuff very, very quickly. Or if you don't like that, maybe you kind of scale your decks back and kind of take a few lumps over a couple weeks or months, and then the reputation will change on you.
The either I woke up today and I'm going to make it everyone's problem scenario, or the no, please don't punch me, I am wearing glasses.
And if you do lean more into the supervillain side, you're more likely to keep away from targeted removal and go into a lot of asymmetrical board wipes for whatever you're doing. Such as if you're in Mardu, doing a Ruinous Ultimatum versus just an Anguished Unmaking.
Or you could be like the cool kids and just have a bunch of blinkable removal.
Those aren't cool kids. That's maybe one cool kid, maybe. And we're not even going to give you that.
I don't think we're going to establish you as the cool kid in this scenario, Levi. You're just an
Maybe
asshole.
the villain.
Drago's the cool kid.
He's really not. He's the popular kid at the lunch table. He's not the cool kid. The cool kid's
Drago
sitting
and
somewhere
or Miku.
else.
Even we're getting some new Blink tech with Avatar set that I'm really excited for with the airbending. I think that's going to be interesting. It does make you more susceptible to counter spells because you have to recast things, but I'm really excited to play around in the space.
I'm excited to finally have more experience counters. Please, just a few more. I'm almost there.
I'm also very appreciative of just all the references to the animals in the show, too. There is going to be a dragon elk because it's a dragon moose dragging a wagon. It's a dragon dragging a wagon.
There is. Or if you noticed the main character, the My Cabbages guy, if you look at that art, you can see the cart up in the sky. It's about to destroy the cart. We'll put it up on the screen. It is great.
Hold on. Of course we're going to put it up on the screen. I do that for every time we reference a card. It actually hurts me so, and I do it to myself.
Speaking of cards, though, we'll get into the next kind of category here, and that's what we talked about earlier in the podcast, the Boogeyman cards. These are cards that, whether it's pod specific or the Magic community as a whole, have deemed to be very, very scary things. Since we originally did the episode, I think that was episode 2, we also got the Game Changer list, which is kind of an extra layer of that. If something is on the Game Changer list, even if it's not necessarily good for that particular deck, it's going to be treated with a lot more respect and attention than it would be another card. For example, I've been currently working on Princess Sarah, or the Azusa landfall from Final Fantasy, and I had crop rotation in the deck, but I decided instead to go with just a Sylvan Scrying. To just put a land into my hand, and then Azusa can just play all the extra lands. That's one less game changer that I'm going to cast. Like, oh, there's a bunch of game changers in the deck, kind of a thing. It's a way to kind of scale back the intensity, and then I also get to keep the land instead of sacrificing it.
And especially if you're also doing easier to cast ones that can have better utility later on, such as recent edition world map or expedition map.
Absolutely. All those are really great, and there's typically ways to go about doing similar things without having as loaded cards as far as reputation is concerned. Another good example would be running a Massacre Girl to get the board cleared instead of a Toxrill.
And especially with just how powerful Massacre Girl is in her original form, can wipe the board quick as hell.
Don't get me wrong. Toxrill is a very, very strong card, and you're going to get a lot of extra synergy. But if you play out a Toxrill and it takes a lot longer for the table to get around to taking you out, it might be one of those cards that is someone's going to remove it, and then someone's going to continue to hit you just because you had the audacity to play it.
That will happen.
Toxrill is toxic. Well, it doesn't
Sure
have
is.
toxic. It just enables toxicity in our city. In our city.
Proud of you. We'll move on to the next one here as well. And the next one is recency bias. Whatever happened the most recent, people are going to pay attention to. If it's a fresh pod, but a player just won the last 2 games, odds are, if it comes down to like a tiebreaker between a couple players and you have the chance to kind of stick it to somebody, probably going to be on the player that just won 2 games, or the player that stopped you from winning the last game, or something along that nature. Even if it's not intentional, I think even the subconscious, people kind of want to get that little petty revenge sometimes.
Sometimes it's easier to just be like, yeah, fine, you wronged me. Stabby stab.
And sometimes that can get a little bit blown out of proportion as well, where you had started to become a little bit scary, and then it was one player after another, till you were essentially left with nothing. That actually did happen to me on a recent stream where I showed how scary Fandaniel is, where however many instants and sorceries you have in your graveyard, you're either going to take twice that many, or you'll just sacrifice a non-token creature. People perceived me as a big threat at that point, and by the end of the next 2 players in order, I had 0 things on board except for lands. And this was literally one after the other after the other. It was rough.
And it definitely can be that bias as you're going. And I think, whether it's the threat, the problem, or the recency bias, there are things that will kind of emotionally or logically charge someone in certain directions. There are some things you can do to kind of take advantage of this as well. The first one, I think the most important, especially when you're not playing, is pay attention. It doesn't necessarily need to be to what the cards are being played, although you should definitely be paying attention to that as well. But like, who's keeping their mana up? Maybe they're looking for a counterspell. If someone is going to chip in for damage, where is that going and why? Are they explaining it, or are they just saying, oh, Joe hit you for 2? The more you can understand somebody's motivation, especially when they talk about like, that's really scary, I want to address it. Of course, they're allowed to lie, but a lot of times it's more transparent or honest as far as what they're intending to do, because if you lie a bunch in Commander, then people aren't going to want to invite you back.
Or they try to play a little bit of cheeky with it and say, what? No, I don't know what you're talking about. Making it very obvious that they don't want to immediately say it, but they're not going to give you the information in some way or shape or form.
Even paying attention to stuff like that, or you could kind of be bluffing a counterspell kind of a thing where someone's constantly asking like, okay, what did you cast? Okay, that's fine. Or something like that. And then maybe they don't have the mana up for it, and just kind of keeping in mind of like what types of spells they're asking for. If they have like a counterspell, but it's maybe more restrictive, like a swan song versus just a counterspell. When someone's casting spells, like who's making that kind of sighing or grunt, or pick up on all of that to kind of see where everyone's mind's at as you're going. The other thing you can do is simply create that social arbitrage, where try to find cards that are going to give you similar production through a little bit of extra work on your end, usually on synergy, outside of like the really good cards that are going to bring a lot more attention to you. A good example might be the Caregiver's Talent, where every time you make a token, first time per turn, you draw a card instead of a Rhystic Study. If you're in a token build, it's going to be really good to be able to make those tokens and draw those cards. That's going to attract a lot less attention than, say, a Rhystic Study or Mystic Remora would, because those are kind of more well-known cards and they're talked about more frequently.
Absolutely fair.
Typically with that as well, I think that's where you have deck builders that really can outdo themselves in brackets 2s and 3s by just simply having a lot of cards that work well together, and they can get that level of production where nothing individually looks that scary, but as a collective, it just gets really, really devastating.
I will always say synergy above all else. If I can synergize, I will show you the meaning of being the problem and the threat.
I just want all of my stupid little dudes and maybe this Crater Hoof. Don't mind me and my stupid little dudes and this Crater Hoof.
Oh man, crazy. Here, let me put out this one thing that makes me a treasure every upkeep, and then, oh hey, here's Garrett and all of my creatures. So many treasures.
Well, it's kind of funny too, because a lot of the lesser value engines like Phyrexian Arena are almost like removal proof, because like no one's really going to want to use and burn a removal spell from their hand to get rid of something that's giving you 1 card per turn. But that's going to last a lot longer, and there's no paying the 1 for it. It's just going to happen.
And especially with Phyrexian Arena, that also just hurts you in the long run too. Oh man, crazy. You're using life as a resource? Typical black player. Let me just swing. Or
If
devastating fireball.
Black had a way to get that life back.
When you're playing as fast as you can, sometimes you don't even think about it.
But with that being said, I'll ask the both of you, is there any other tips and tricks as far as kind of understanding or controlling the narrative for those players that are trying to learn to be better at people?
It's important to understand that there is a difference between manipulation and hiding information, one being acceptable and one not. Saying, hey, I don't have this, this is what I've got going on, and then basically blatantly not lying, but saying like, I clearly cannot do anything to you right now. You should definitely kill that guy while you're holding a board wipe, and then plan to board wipe him immediately afterwards to make him basically be in the shit position. You didn't lie to them. You pointed out and said, yeah, you should probably do that, and there's probably validity to that. That doesn't make you less of a dick for, also, by the way, you have nothing anymore. I kill all of it.
Truthfully, at the end of the day, it's something that we always harp here at the Thought Vessel. Communication is king. Being open and honest is the pathway to get perceived as the threat and problem less. Maybe not to 0, because you will still be a problem at some points.
But even then, if you're transparent, like, hey, this is a problem for y'all, you should probably remove it. The next time that you play with that group and say, I'm not the threat, they're more likely going to believe you. That's going to give you a lot of good graces for future games as well. I think that's a very good point to look at with that transparency. I think it helps you overall in the long run, and clear conscience is definitely something to keep in mind as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there any other final comments we'd like to go over?
I like big threats and I cannot lie. You other brothers can't deny.
little bitty creature walks in pace.
You're getting there. I
with
believe in you.
equipment.
And then they
Face.
fling Crater Hoof at your face.
There we go. We tried. And therefore, no
You
one
get
can judge
flung.
us. That one's real good. That one's real good.
We're going to come out with a holiday album at this point. It's going to be great.
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah.
that is all the time we have. This has been Thought Vessel. I'm Levi.
I'm Jacoby.
And I'm Joe.
And all you beautiful people have a fantastic rest of your week.
Take care.
This podcast is the threat. Why aren't you dealing with it?